Welcome to another DragonLance Saga episode. It is me, Sham, Dark Ember the 18th. My name is Adam, and today I'm going to give you my review of Dragons of a Lost Star. Now, I just finished this today, and I got a lot to talk to you all about it. I don't know why I'm like staggering it like that. Before I do, I want to remind you all that this is going to be a spoiler review, and this book, in particular in the trilogy of the War of Souls trilogy, is filled with spoilers. So if you don't want to be spoiled by this, if you want to come into the War of Souls, into this novel, without any knowledge of what's happening, don't watch this. Come back at some other time after you've read it and share your thoughts with me. I'll certainly appreciate it then as much as I appreciate it now. That being said, I would like to take a moment and thank the members of this YouTube channel. Invite you to consider becoming a member by visiting the link in the description below, and you can even pick up Dragonlance gaming materials by using the other link in the description below. Again, this is a live review, so if you happen to be able to catch it live, I love to see any of your comments in chat. After I deliver my review, I'll refer to those comments and we'll just sort of riff a little bit about Dragonlance. We'll have a little bit of fun. It's Thursday. Tomorrow's going to be Friday. That's a great day, so let's use that as this is a gateway day of a good day, right? We'll have some fun. Let's do it. All right, so chapters 1 through 9 pick up right where Dragons of a Fallen Sun left off. Beryl is attacking the Citadel of Light and drops Draconians to find Palin and the device of time journeying. They spot him, and he begins to use pieces of the broken device to allow him to cast magical spells again, attacking the Draconians to make an escape into the maze. They ascend the crystal stairs and escape the burning maze after the dragons attack it to try to smoke them out, and Dalamar rescues them at the top, teleporting them away. Beryl destroys the towers out of rage. Martial Maiden tells Laurana who the spy in her employ is, and Gilthaz insists on confronting him. He's tried on murder. He tries to murder Laurana when his brother kills him instead. He did slice her arm, and the Marshal bandages her up as the king leaves to address his people, no longer pretending to be the puppet they believed. He goes on to tell them about the coming army of Beryls and the evacuation plan of Qualinesti. Goldmoon and Conundrum finally make shore, breaking the submersible as Goldmoon continues following the Sea of the Dead and Conundrum following her. Silvanesti is obsessed with Mina, who is indifferent to him. And the Lord of the Night Targon sets into motion a plan to murder Mina, using Sylvan as his unknowing agent. Alhana is traversing the Silvanesti forest, not able to enter the city, but being kept informed by the Kirath. The young elves are worshipping Mina, and the Dark Knights are treating the elves with respect, further confusing the Dark Knight leadership and the Kirath, who want to reject the Knights. Chapters 10 to 18 have Mina knowingly walking into the trap and being killed by the ring gifted to her by Sylvan, who in turn got it from Lord Targon unknowingly. Targon arrives in person to see her funeral, and as they bring Sylvan, beaten and bruised, to watch the funeral pyre, they end up lighting up the funeral pyre, and this enormous death dragon comes and basically blots out the sun, and Mina ends up standing triumphantly, quite alive at the top of the funeral pyre, putting the fire out, just I guess with her like mere presence, or maybe the death dragon did it. Ultimately, she orders Targon's death and takes over the leadership of the Knights of Naraka. She ends up telling the Knights to kill any elves who are unwilling to give tribute to Malaz in order to placate her for a little while she goes and takes care of some other business in northern Ansalon. Let's see. The sky ends up being filled with the colored dragons answering the call of the one god, and is at this point everyone reading this book should know who the one god is. That's your first and only clue that you actually need. There's a couple little niblet hints dropped in the first book, but this should be the obvious answer. Now, I say that, I didn't know the first time I read it. So I had no idea until halfway through this book. But this is the very first half of the book, and I still didn't pick up on all the clues. There are so many hints that it seems like it should be obvious, again, on the second read through, though it does seem to be inconceivable as being able to actually make the guess because we did just live through a whole trilogy of 5th Age novels by Gene Rabe, a whole bunch of Dragonlance 5th Age content. So why it would be who it's suggesting it is, who we'll end up getting to in a little bit, seems pretty out there. And that also lends into why people don't want to believe it is who it is. It is here that Silvanesti becomes the whiny baby. He starts believing in the one god and actually abandons his mother Alhana and Samar to follow Mina. The one god wants Sylvan for her own, for if he was independent, he would actually be able to lead a rebellion against her. His love for Mina is blinding him to the truth. We see Mina as a Christ-like presence now, as she is returned from the dead and demands obedience and devotion more fervently than ever, as she becomes the Lord of Night, and the game pieces start to come together. This is where the novel starts to pick up its pace, and it just goes to this steadily growing momentum until the final end. Marshall Meaden meets Beryl's new messenger, who attacks Laurana in her cell and is incapacitated by Maiden, Laurana, and Planchet. Maiden sends him back to Beryl, saying that he will not kill Laurana on orders of Targon, but he will hand over Qualinesti as ordered. He also has to execute many elves who are actually evacuated after hearing of the coming of the army. So Marshall Meaden is just playing this game with Beryl, trying to placate her, trying to bide enough time for the elves to get out of town. Palin tries to escape the tower and is actually attacked by the dead, draining his life from him, so he returns to understanding that Dalamar is actually trapped in the tower and can only leave via astral projection. They begin working together to figure out what the hell is going on with Taz and the device, the pieces of which returned to Taz, who is bored out of his mind in the tower, ends up climbing up the chimney and escapes the tower, running into his own spirit. Now, this tells us that he is already dead. He did die when Chaos stepped on him. So that means that there are divergent timelines that he somehow, using the device of time journeying, traveled over to this new divergent timeline. And all that concern that Dalamar and mainly Palin had about Taz going back to get stepped on to correct the timeline, we know is not going to matter because he's already dead. Gerard arrives on the outskirts of Salanthus and is captured by a knight who takes him to prison, believing him to be a Narakan knight. She promises to look for those who may know his name. Gerard is hopeless and afraid that he will be killed as a spy. Chapters 19 to 27 bring a flurry of events as the story nears its conclusion. Mina arrives in Nightland to meet with Dalamar, who she demands, and while she's there, she demands use of the tower in order to meet someone in the short future. Dalamar, shocked and humbled by her present, has no choice but to accept. Palin watches and recognizes Mina from the Citadel of Light when she was a kid. Dalamar asks that if Mina sees Tasslehoff, that she bring him to Dalamar, and Mina grows furious that Dalamar and Taz had lost him and the device, saying that the one god wants him. Her armies are now on the lookout. That should be our first clue that we are repeating a trope that was first shown to us in Legends. Taz arrives at Salanthus looking for Gerard and runs into Goldmoon and Conundrum. Goldmoon speaks on Gerald's behalf at the Knights' Council, and they demand everyone stay while they check on the validity of the stories shared. Goldmoon is being pulled to Nightland and breaks Gerard out with the Song of Sleep from the one god Mina has used before, and they all walk out of Salanthus. They're going to travel on Dragonback to Nightland. Mirror, convinced that he recognizes the one god's voice, travels to Ski's lair to confront him on the suspicion, and he arrives when Mina is confronting Ski. Ski refuses to go along with the one god, knowing exactly who it is, and feels like he has been lied to by it already. He reveals that he's not actually from Krynn, but was brought there to rule 200 years before, and that he was then promised that he would have Kitiara and, to go into the gray and find Kitiara and come back, which again, never happened. And so again, he feels like he was being screwed. He's infuriated by Mina, and he ends up blasting her with lightning. She drops to the ground dead again, and then rises again, like reflecting this sort of stored energy that he threw on her back out and through her eyes, which is a very weird scene to read, and it's not entirely clear why lightning would kill a blue dragon. Seems like they'd be immune to it. Doesn't make sense, but okay, it's in the story. So she he ends up becoming trapped in his mind as he's slowly dying from this attack by Mina. Mina leaves with the other dragons, and Mirror goes to confer with his old enemy, Ski, about, again, who the one god is. Qualinesti is being raided, and Gilthaz and the Lioness leave the city with the majority of Qualinost's residents through the dwarven tunnels, which are guarded by the dwarves that built them. Martial Maiden and Laurana devise a plan to stay and try to destroy Beryl with the Lost Star and a Dragonlance. Laurana admits that she abandoned the Knights of Solamnia in their time of need for the love of Tanis, a point I have made over and over on this very YouTube channel, and Laurana superfans refuse to accept. They say, no, she's a general. She could do whatever she wants. She didn't abandon them, trying to do this weird mental gymnastics, when the whole time Laurana is saying it herself. I don't know why people can't accept that Laurana has major faults and she abandoned the Whitestone armies in their desperate time of need so that she could run after Tanis. She even admits it. Why can't the fans admit it? It drives me nuts. So anyway, she admits that she is shamed by it. So everyone just needs to deal with it, okay? She admitted it then. She's admitting it now. Read it both if you don't believe me. But it's there. Now, we know that the dragons and more know who the one god is at this point. They can't believe it's true due to the state of the world. Mina has been struck dead twice now, so we should know who and what she is, though that won't be confirmed for another trilogy. And we know that the Shadow Sorcerer taught Dalamar necromancy to get his power back and inadvertently start this whole ball rolling with the removal of the Tower of High Sorcery to Nightland. Chapters 28 to 36 bring the terrifying conclusions and truths to many characters. Lady Odelia follows Gerald, and Goldmoon tracks out of Salanthus into the cave, where she overhears Gerard telling Goldmoon that the dragon will take her to Nightland at dark, but that he must return to defend Salanthus from the coming army that appeared on the horizon. They leave together and are approached by Galadar and sent to Mina's tent, where Gerard tells partial truths about the Qualinesti to Mina, and Mina shows the mind of the one god to Odelia. They break out of the encampment at night, and the Solamnic Knights are then ready for battle the next morning. As they ride out of Salanthus, the Sea of the Dead swarm in, terrifying them, while the living Knights of Naraka army actually attack them. Mina and the dragons take the city, telling the Knights to flee before dawn or die. She says that Sanction is her next city to fall, so many of the Knights plan on journeying there in order to warn them. It is a fitting end location, as it is where Mina first showed her first true power. Now, as Gilthaz and the refugees flee Qualinost, Martial Maiden and Laurana climb the Tower of the Sun to face off against Beryl, when Laurana's servant attacks and kills Maiden for corrupting his brother. Laurana looks to Sturm Brightblade's memory for courage, and herein is a beautiful realization that he stood against the dragons to allow the army to defeat them, and now Laurana was doing the exact same thing, certain of the same fate awaiting her. She uses the Lost Star to freeze Beryl as the elves and humans cast their magical nets across her bloated body, dragging her down. And though many died, they were successful as Laurana plunged the Dragonlance into his skull. She is lifted off the ground and then drops, paralyzing herself in the fall, and the dragon crushes her with its immense weight. As it falls to the ground, the tunnels the dwarves dug collapse under her, and the dragon dies. The city falls down on top of her, and the river floods the crater, creating the Nalis Aren, the Lake of Death. Gilthaz is told by runners and is uncertain of the elven exile's fate. Goldmoon arrives at the Tower of High Sorcery and is welcomed by Dalamar. Taz and Conundrum are locked in a room by Palin, who hears that Taz saw his own soul and realizes that the gnome and the device of time journeying are coming together as a part of a larger plan. Again, referencing legends. Goldmoon is met by Mina in the laboratory, where Mina explains that she did all of this for Goldmoon to emulate what Goldmoon actually did. In the time of isolation, she found a god and brought healing to the world. Goldmoon understood the god as Takesis through Mina's false narrative and rebukes her. Takesis strikes down Goldmoon with the portal to the abyss, and the Goldmoon finally dies. Unfortunately, we all know her soul is going to be joined with all of the other souls under Takesis' rule. Mina is devastated, and we close with a mysterious figure crossing the Shall Sea with his horse. This was fantastic. fantastic. I don't know if it's better because I already know what's going to happen, but all of the highs and lows, all of the humor and dread are hitting me at 100 throughout this entire reading. The first time I read it, I was full of confusion and frustration, and I know it's like now for me it's like a beautiful drama. I'm really enjoying this revisiting of these old novels. Gerard and Galadar, Mina and Conundrum, Martial Maiden, and Lady Odelia are all great new characters. Laurana and Goldmoon were wonderful to return to, and they stayed true to their characters, though they have actually shown growth, facing their destinies with exactly the same grace expected of them. The truth about the one god being Takesis was revealed early in the story, but only laid out plain at the end. This really frustrated me the first read through, but this time, with the perspectives and time, it makes perfect sense. Paladine, Gillian, and Takesis brought gods from the other outer planes in order to help them govern this new world. Why wouldn't Takesis do the same with the dragons in the god's absence? She uses Dalamar to start what she was too weak to start with the dead, and ultimately uses Mina as her missionary. It's almost painfully obvious and brilliantly Takesis in its device. If you're a fan of Dragonlance or 5th Age or 4th Age, then this trilogy is a must read. All right, you read this and didn't like it except for the fight against Beryl. Can't fault you, Silverwolf. It's not for everyone, clearly. I did really enjoy it. What was it that bothered you the most on your read-through? Yeah, Nimsh was the first one. Takesis, she can't get out of her own way. She is so bad at taking over the world. And she keeps trying to do it. And this is as close as she's ever going to get. And she actually pretty much does it, for all intents and purposes. But yeah, she I don't know why she thinks that allowing a gnome to fix the device of time journeying is somehow going to benefit her in the end when it's in the hands of heroes. And especially in this second one, when Conundrum's the one that fixes it, but it's with the same Kender who helped defeat her from the last attempt. Why would you ever think that, Takesis? What is wrong with you? But what are you going to do? The ease which Silvanesti, Ski, and Salanthus were defeated. Oh, okay. So Salanthus I could actually understand more than the other two, just for me, because a sea of the dead would freak any militia out. I mean, that, you're blinded by these creatures grasping at you and trying to suck the life out of you. That would freeze anyone. And then the Knights in Naraka could just come in and mop you up while you're freaking out. So I get that one. And they had tons of dragons that no one ever saw in order to take this one-walled city. So yeah, there was no good dragons to defend. So it makes perfect sense that Salanthus would fall so easily to me. Silvanesti, if it was only Silvanesti, the reason, if he was the only reason why Silvanesti fell, then I would have a problem with it. But it said the entire time that she was bewitching all of the youth, all the young elves and some of the old elves. Like, people were just on her side 100%. And they only went off and murdered and tortured the ones who weren't with her. And we've seen that in real world situations, politically, especially like the Third Reich, for example, where you have people that are devoted to the political machine, and they sort of turn a blind eye to the atrocities that are happening because they believe that it's really great. These people have been without any type of god for, I think it's 30, 40 years or something. Now, to an elf, that's not much, except that they've lived with Paladine for hundreds of years. And then suddenly he's gone, and this young lady comes and heals them, heals their children, heals their spouses, takes care of their king, puts the king back on the throne. I mean, they really laid a lot of groundwork on why the people of Silvanesti would, follow her. And so when she finally did flip the script on him and say, no, we're still going to treat you like the old school Knights in Naraka or Knights of Takesis, we're going to subjugate you, then it was too late, Silvanesti, I think, is just a bitch. He's a little punk. I don't like him. I liked him in the first novel because he showed strength and decisiveness. But as soon as he lost all that and just became this puppy dog under Mina, it was pathetic. And I don't understand why any character would do that. I know why, because we know who and what Mina is, but it just seemed, I don't know. It was just out of left field, you know? In either case, the other one you mentioned was Ski. Yeah, what the hell? First of all, why even mention that he was from another place, that he wasn't from Krynn naturally? Like that, you just drop that on us right before you knock him off the page? Like, that's weird. We've grown to love this monster over 3 trilogies now. So it was the Chronicles, Lost Chronicles, arguably, Legends, and then he was prominently featured in the Gene Rabe trilogy, so that's 4. And this is the 5th trilogy he's in. Why do you change him now? That makes no sense. I don't know. I mean, I guess it was a way to explain why he was able to be like the other dragon overlords and like absorb the power when the other regular Krynn dragons couldn't do it. But it just felt hollow. And then his death was the most pathetic. First of all, we weren't around when he died. We left the scene. It was him and Mira whispering in his ear like, hey, is that really Takesis? Like, tell me, that's Takesis, right? The one god? Like, it sounds like Takesis to me. And that's it. We don't get anything from Ski. Like, I know people pronounce it Sky. I pronounce it Ski. It kind of bugged me too. That was the one. Like, I could see Kind Bloodbane because he was a Krynn dragon and he was being attacked by the entire elven military under the command of Mina, who we know what she is, and so that just reinforces why she could kill a Krynn dragon so easily. But Kellandros, who now we know was an alien dragon, and he died by lightning? He's a blue dragon! What? That's like drowning a fish. What are you doing? It doesn't make any sense. But okay, it's your story. Write it your own way. Yeah, that one drove me nuts. Total nuts. Anyway, what do you guys think? I'm really interested in hearing your opinions on this, because ultimately, now that we know who the one god is, we are right back to the same old tropes that we experienced in Chronicles and Legends. So, are they going too close to old ground? Are they just trying to placate the audience that loves the 4th Age and was really frustrated with the 5th Age? It feels like they're going a little too far in that direction, for sure, and maybe that's also why I like it. But I do like seeing, like, I feel like Goldmoon and Laurana make up for a lot of the ridiculousness in this novel, because their characters are so great. Goldmoon the whole time is talking about how she can feel herself dying inside, one step closer to death. She should be joining Riverwind, her love of her life and her children, but she's being held together by this damn one god, and it's driving her crazy trying to figure it out. And it's why she's hearing the voice so prevalently, because she's so close to death. And then Laurana, in her eternal grace, is still the one. There's this great scene where Laurana is putting on that leather apron that she wore as the Golden General and putting on the armor and stuff, and she realizes she's a little bit thicker than she remembered. You know, it brought this really wonderfully human element to the character of, yeah, even elves age. And Laurana, though she probably, if it was a natural life, would live for a very long time yet, she can still feel life moving on, and her, I feel like with Laurana, she's willing to accept the end because of the stakes of the game. You know what I mean? Like, if she had her druthers, she would just work in her garden and you know, dote on her son for the rest of her days, and a long life. But I don't know, man. To return to your comment, Silver, with Goldmoon there, the way they ended it so abruptly, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I would have liked to get a little narrative inside Goldmoon's head of finally, you know, it just said from the outside in of Mina watching, like, you know, she traveled. I felt like I was watching Raiders of the Lost Ark, when they opened up the Ark and the ghosts came out and all the Nazis started like deteriorating and turning into skeletons and their hair grew long. Like, that's how I saw it when I was reading the narrative of what Mina was watching happen to Goldmoon. But what I would really wanted, because they set it up so beautifully in Silvanesti at the Knights Council, was for Goldmoon to have this inner monologue of, finally I'm returning to my natural way and I get to pass from this life to the next. even though she knows she's not going to. But at least she gets to be with Riverwind in her mind and her children. So I would have loved to have that sort of cathartic moment with Goldmoon that we were kind of robbed of, especially because they did really build up to it, but they just didn't pay it off. But I thought that not to get that, but then to in turn get the perspective of Mina doing all of this for Goldmoon. I thought it was a wonderful twist, because ultimately this whole 2 novels so far is Mina praising the one God, saying she's doing it all for the one God. And now she finally admits in the face of the one God and in the face of Goldmoon, no, this is for you, Goldmoon. You took care of me. Of course, she doesn't know that she's a pawn, but in her pawn-like imaginings, you took care of me. You raised me. You taught me the lessons that I'm employing right now. I'm doing all of this for you. And in fact, they make a special note that Goldmoon looks the way she does, which is not the way she was in her youth, but because it's a reflection of someone else's perception of her, Mina's perception. She looks like what Mina thinks she should have looked like in her youth, not what she actually did. And that was a really beautiful turn as well, as a reveal of, oh, that's why she looks different. I assumed it was because that was the one God, but ultimately Mina admitted that that's why, because it was her. And so I liked that it was a very clear stepping stone of saying, no, this was not for the one God. This was for you, Goldmoon. And I can't believe that you are not accepting this wonderful gift that you delivered to the people of Krynn, at the very beginning of the War of the Lands. Like, I'm just doing what you did. Why don't you accept me? I love that idea. It's got to be torture to Mina. And at this next novel, she has to start to realize she's a pawn, because she doesn't realize who and what she actually is until the last trilogy that Margaret Weis wrote in Dragonlance, which is after this. But she has to realize that she's a pawn, and she has to take some step to either accept, yes, this is the destiny that I chose, and so I have to move forward with it, or I'm going to rage against the machine. Of course, if you've ever read this before, you know the direction she goes. How much do you think Takis's plans were down to Mina? I don't think any at all. She was saying that she was constantly listening to the voice, and that the one God was telling her what to do the whole time, and that she was acting on behalf of the one God the whole time. I think in Mina's defense, she was willing to go along with it because she thought she was just reliving Goldmoon's youth. She was like, look, I'm doing what Goldmoon did, and it turned out well for her. So, Krynn is clearly suffering. Let me be the savior, and I'll just do whatever the God tells me to do, and it'll all work out in the end. I think she's just naive. And it sucks to say that after all the growth that we see her go through, but even in the end, she's devoting everything to that one God, and she's not accepting any responsibility or decision-making at all, other than, I just want to be like you, Goldmoon, which I think is a little bit strange, especially when we realize who she is. Galadar, I didn't talk about him in the last book review, and I felt cheated after because I saw someone make a comment about how great of a character he is. I think him and Lady Odelia are so wonderful in this. Their banter back and forth, how frustrated she makes Galadar. I'm sorry, I'm talking about Gerard, not Galadar. Gerard and Lady Odelia. And how screwed he is always finding himself. Like, he's another character who can't get out of his own way. He goes swimming and forgets the dispatch about the king from Gilthaz in Qualinesti. And so he gets captured without the actual proof he's going to actually need to prove who and what he is doing. He's in an impossible situation, because of Marshall Maiden's insistence that he ride a blue dragon and he wear Knights of Naraka armor. I mean, there's nothing he can do. He's just screwed. And the fact that there isn't like a universal charter for Solemnic Knights is an insane thought to me. You're living in a time where the Solemnic Knights are sort of on their heels, but they still exist. They have a stronghold city of Solanthus. Why wouldn't they have a charter of all members of the knighthood? Wouldn't smaller outposts who those knights were assigned to have like reciprocal records being passed back and forth? Like, this knight was assigned to this, and it goes to like some, like the library at Planthus, for example. It seems like there should be some sort of database, volumes of books on who the knights are. And it's so strange that you're in Salanthus, not very far from Palanthus when you think about it, but, you know, which is where Gerard's family is from and, like, famously from. Why no one would know his last name or who he was? That's so strange to me. And I get, like, one person, one soldier or whatever, you know, it's easy to overlook, but they made such a big deal about him, his father buying so much and paying so much money to the knighthood in order to ensure his inclusion. Like, wouldn't there be like a building named after him, you know, like they do for like libraries? If you donate a bunch of money to a university, for example, they name a library after you or something. Wouldn't they do that for his father if they really did spend that much money? So I thought that was a little strange. But the character and the dynamics between the characters, I think, are fantastic. I love that there's a knight of Naraka who was a knight of Takhisis and believed in it and does not apologize in the end either about it. He's a soldier who is assigned to Qualinesti and falls in love with the people. A little Dances with Wolves or Avatar for me, but still, like, he falls in love with Laurana, knows he cannot get the reciprocal love in return, and so he does everything he can to take care of her and her people, wanting desperately to be. And right at the last moment when he's facing his own death and they're leaving the garden to go face off against Beryl, Laurana finally includes him as being one of their kind. And he's just like choking back the tears of finally being accepted in the last final hour of who he desperately loves and wants to be a part of. And he's going against everything he's ever known in order to protect. And finally he's one of them. It's such a beautiful idea, and I love it so much. Although I will have to say that my perspective of the elves, of Silvanesti and Qualinesti elves, after I just wrote next week's Dragonlance setting video that I release on, I think it's Tuesdays, and it's about the Kogonesti elves. So be prepared for a bit of a diatribe in that one. The Silvanesti and the Qualinesti are horrible, and it's addressed directly at the very end of this by Planchet when he's talking about, hey, look, I'm House Servitor. I don't have a choice. I was born into slavery, but from now on, no one will be born into slavery. The elves have to change now. They cannot subjugate their own kind anymore. And there's something beautiful in that as well. Like, for all of time, everyone reflects on the elves as these beautiful entities, and they're the first chosen ones, and they're, you know, they're just loving and eternal. They're racist as shit, and they're bigoted, and they're hate-filled, and they are slavers to their own kind. They're the worst. The Silvanesti elves are the worst of... They're as bad as the ogres who enslaved humans, except arguably worse because they enslaved their own kind. Gave them no choice, and when anyone ever talked back, they'd disappear or they'd be outcast as dark elves. Then the Qualinesti, who then separated because they're more equal, you know, they believe in more of equality, are just as bad. Like, I can't believe anyone would ever look at an elf and be like, oh yeah, that's a good race, when all of their actions are to the contrary. All of them. You have rare exceptions, like Alhana, Samar, Porthios, Gilthanas, Laurana. But the citizens? The Senate? Oh no. Most of the kings in the past? No, they're the worst. The worst. You think Weis and Hickman write elves terribly? I can't argue. I really can't. I mean, they're playing with these tropes of civilized races versus uncivilized of the same race. They do it with the humans and the plainsmen. They do it with the elves and the Kogonesti. And they do it with, you know, the ogres with the Irida and the fallen ogres as they were. And they're trying to play on these tropes that they see in our own world, I think, where we see native peoples versus civilized peoples. But what they fail to recognize is that the civilized peoples are horrible to all native species, native peoples. I mean, look at America. But also that the native peoples aren't good either. Like, if you ever actually look into the the lifestyles of native peoples, it's vicious and brutal. And they enslaved each other and they raided each other and they would rape and murder with the best of them. So it's not like native peoples were all peace and loving and, you know, flowers in their hair, hippie type shit. No, they were brutal peoples. But civilized peoples, they were worse. It's just this horrible... Hey, Steve, screw you elves. This is turning into an elf bashing. I didn't mean it to be. It was painted vividly at the very end of this novel. To Lorana, who recognizes it in the text. And then, yeah, and they're supposed to be the children of Paladine, which is like, huh. There's no good anything in this world. And that's why I did that episode, that video, calling Dragonlance a dystopia. There's no good people in this world. The Knights of Solemnias are just as terrible as everyone else. I mean, you'll find tiny examples of wonderful people in this campaign world, but the masses of people are the worst that you could ever imagine them being all the time. Even to their own detriment, they're the worst. So Dragonlance is just a dystopian world. There's no way anyone's having a good time here. It's just pain and pain and pain on itself. All right. It's a puff pastry of pain. A little alliteration for you. That's all I had for this review of Dragons of the Lost Star by Margaret, Weis, and Tracy Hickman. Do you believe the author successfully united the disparate fan bases? What do you think of Mina? And do you enjoy these reviews that I'm putting out here? If you do, let me know. If you don't, let me know. So you can always email me at dlsaga@pm.me, or you can leave a comment live in the live chat or in the comment section below if you're watching this after the fact. I would like to once again invite you to consider becoming a member of this channel and remind you that you can pick up Dragonlance gaming materials using my affiliate link, which are in the description below. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the Dragonlance Saga, even when I complain about it. I absolutely love this campaign world. I hope you'll join me for the celebration. It's funny because I just did a whole diatribe about the elves, but I do really, truly love this wonderful world. Thank you so much for watching. Have a fantastic week and upcoming weekend. Until next time, Slanjavar.